On May 21, 2021, a shocking case in South Korea shook the military system and sparked nationwide outrage. The tragedy escalated when a female soldier, Lee Yerin, was found dead by suicide in her home. Upon hearing the devastating news, her husband rushed back home to find her cold and lifeless body. He broke down in inconsolable grief. What made the tragedy even more heartbreaking was that the day she died was the very day they registered their marriage. That morning, the couple joyfully shared their marriage certificate with the world. But life cruelly took away his bride on what was supposed to be their happiest day. Lee Yerin's father was devastated and refused to accept his daughter's death. While going through her belongings, he discovered a video that she had recorded before her death. After watching it, he too broke down in tears. On her phone, she had left a haunting note. "My body is now filthy. Regarding my death, all of them are murderers." Believing it to be a case of foul play, her father immediately contacted the police. But who were all of them that she referred to in the video? Why would they want Lee Yerin dead? And why was this case so deeply tied to the military system at the time? Let's uncover the answers to these questions in today's video. You're watching The Dark Cases of Asia. If you like how we present these cases, comment with a 1. If not, just like this video. Before we dive into the main content, we, the team at The Dark Cases of Asia, sincerely thank you for visiting. Please support us by subscribing to our channel. It gives us the motivation to bring you more gripping cases from around the world. Now, let's get into the details of today's case. As soon as the authorities received the report, police rushed to the scene. Following a preliminary investigation, they ruled the case as a suicide with no signs of foul play. However, after a brief examination, the military police dropped the case entirely, choosing not to investigate further. They even ignored the video Lee Yerin had recorded before her death. This lack of action deeply angered and frustrated her family. Feeling abandoned by the authorities, her father took matters into his own hands. He published a petition online, along with the video Lee Yerin had recorded prior to her death. The petition contained detailed information about her life and the truth she revealed in the video. Lee Yerin was known to be a beautiful young woman, born into a middle-class family in Seoul, South Korea. It's important to note that South Korea has a significant gap between the wealthy and the poor. While many people from lower social classes struggle to make ends meet, Lee Yerin's family was well off. Both her parents held high-ranking positions in major corporations, providing her with a life of material comfort and abundance. They adored her like a princess and would do anything to fulfill her wishes. Her father, in particular, was willing to pluck stars from the sky if it would make her happy. Despite being pampered since childhood, Lee Yerin was not spoiled. She was known for her gentle and resilient personality, earning the admiration of her friends for her approachable and understanding nature. Since childhood, Lee Yerin nurtured a grand dream of becoming a soldier. She was captivated by the image of courageous female soldiers who embodied loyalty and a willingness to serve their country. Driven by this inspiration, she decided to pursue a military career immediately after graduating from high school, a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. At the military academy, Lee Yerin excelled, standing out with her exceptional academic achievements and her disciplined approach to training. After 2 years, she was selected to join the 2nd Combat Brigade of the South Korean Air Force, one of the most elite units in the military. This was a rare and prestigious opportunity, as the 2nd Combat Brigade was not only a prominent part of the Air Force, but also played a crucial role in national defense strategies. Upon entering the military, Lee Yerin quickly earned recognition from her peers and superiors due to her outstanding abilities. She was praised for her diligence and unwavering dedication. Moreover, her beautiful appearance, fair skin, a slender figure drew considerable attention within the military. She stood out not only for her talent but also for her striking looks. In fact, talent scouts from entertainment companies had approached her in the past, but Lee Yerin had no interest in such offers. Her heart was set on serving in the military and protecting her country, and she was determined to follow this path. However, Lee Yerin never anticipated the dark reality that awaited her as a female soldier in her unit. Instead of receiving recognition and respect from some of her officers, she became the target of malice and ridicule. In the video she recorded, despite her panic and relentless tears, her voice breaking at times, she courageously exposed everything through her testimony. From the moment she joined the Air Force, Lee Yaron sensed an overly enthusiastic attitude from some of the male soldiers. They frequently approached her, sometimes making unwanted physical contact. Initially, she dismissed it as friendly gestures from her senior colleagues toward a newcomer. But soon, she realized these behaviors amounted to harassment. To preserve her dignity and avoid misunderstandings, Lee Yaron politely responded to compliments and subtly mentioned that she had a boyfriend, hoping this would deter inappropriate attention. However, despite her efforts, some men lacked self-control. They openly commented on her figure and appearance, making disrespectful remarks. This situation caused Lee Yaron significant discomfort. In an effort to avoid such encounters, she sought solitude, steering clear of those who made her uncomfortable. But her avoidance did little to deter them, as their behavior only grew more juvenile and invasive. What Lee Yaron feared most were the mandatory social gatherings hosted by her superiors. As a subordinate, she was unable to refuse these events. During these gatherings, she frequently endured teasing and harassment from male colleagues. Among them, the most egregious was Sergeant Zhang, a superior who had fixated on her since her early days in the military. He not only made vulgar comments but also touched her inappropriately during these drinking sessions. Lee Yaron made efforts to resist during these gatherings. On one occasion, she publicly criticized Sergeant Zhang's actions. However, other men present came to his defense, dismissing his behavior as merely drunkenness rather than intentional misconduct. After that incident, Lee Yaron avoided all gatherings, especially if Sergeant Zhang was present. Unfortunately, her attempts to stay away from trouble were in vain. Things took an even darker turn, plunging her into despair. On the evening of March 2, 2021, amidst the global fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, her superior, Second Lieutenant Wu, approached her and ordered her to attend a private party. Sensing something was amiss, Lee Yaron immediately refused. However, Lieutenant Wu threatened her with a harsh tone, declaring it was a direct order and warning her of consequences if she disobeyed. Faced with overwhelming pressure from her superior, Lee Yaron had no choice but to reluctantly agree to attend the dreadful event that night. Upon arriving at the location, Lee Yaron quickly realized something was amiss. Including her, there were 5 people present at the gathering, violating South Korea's strict COVID-19 restrictions at the time, which limited such gatherings to a maximum of 4 people. To make matters worse, Sergeant Zhang, the man who had harassed her during a previous event, was also present. His presence filled her with unease, and she immediately wanted to leave. Remaining calm, she approached Second Lieutenant Wu and said, "It's the pandemic, and gatherings of more than 4 people are against regulations. Including me, there are 5. I'm leaving." However, Lieutenant Wu dismissed her concerns and, with a threatening tone, pressured her to stay. Reluctantly, Lee Yaron suppressed her frustration and complied, wary of the repercussions of disobeying her superior. The tension heightened when Sergeant Zhang poured a drink and insisted on toasting with her. Lee Yaron resolutely refused, citing her responsibility to drive and her need to remain sober. The men at the gathering taunted her, their sleazy behavior on full display. Sergeant Zhang, clearly intoxicated, made cryptic remarks accompanied by a suggestive smirk. While Lee Yaron didn't fully grasp his meaning, she knew it wasn't anything decent. The gathering dragged on late into the night as the men continued drinking. By the time it ended, the others were visibly intoxicated, and Lee Yaron only wanted to leave the disgraceful event as quickly as possible. But just as she prepared to depart, Sergeant Zhang, swaying unsteadily from drunkenness, approached her and demanded a ride back to the base, claiming he was too drunk to drive. The other 3 men promptly drove off in their own vehicles, leaving Lee Yaron with no choice but to give the unruly sergeant a ride. As they drove, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Near an isolated area, Sergeant Zhang suddenly asked her to slow down and stop, citing the need to vomit. Assuming he needed to sober up, Lee Yaron reluctantly complied. But as soon as she stopped, he seized the opportunity. Zhang abruptly grabbed the car keys, forcing the vehicle into stillness, and lunged toward her in the driver's seat. With brute force, he pinned her down and assaulted her. The attack left Li Yaren in shock and terror. Despite her attempts to fight back, her strength was no match for the large and intoxicated man. That night, the sergeant violated her in an act of unspeakable violence, shattering her spirit in a way she could never have imagined. Disheveled and broken, Li Yaren returned to the base with her hair in disarray and her clothes crumpled. The weight of the abuse she had endured, coupled with the injustices she had faced since joining the military, crushed her. But what devastated her most was the realization that Sergeant Zhang had dared to assault her in such a brazen and vile manner. The following day, Li Yaren mustered the courage to confront Second Lieutenant Wu and report the heinous act. However, his response was not what she had hoped for. Instead of taking action or offering her any form of support, Wu coldly dismissed her complaint. With a chilling tone, he warned her that escalating the matter would lead to unfavorable consequences for her, leaving her even more distraught and hopeless. Realizing that Second Lieutenant Wu had no intention of helping her, Li Yaren took matters into her own hands. She retrieved the video footage from her car's dashcam, which documented Sergeant Zhang's crime, and filed a report with the military police. She hoped her bravery would ensure that the perpetrator faced justice. However, the response from the military police was a nightmare. Instead of investigating Zhang, they turned their focus on Li. Over 15 days, she was summoned 17 times for questioning, forced to recount the traumatic events in excruciating detail repeatedly. Meanwhile, Zhang, the accused, was called in only once. This relentless interrogation left Li emotionally shattered and deeply anxious. 15 days after receiving the complaint, the military police finally conducted a cursory investigation of Sergeant Zhang. When he claimed he couldn't remember anything because he was drunk, they promptly released him without imposing any disciplinary actions. Shockingly, Zhang was transferred to another position with the same privileges and rank. Fueled by anger and despair, Li Yaren decided to continue her legal battle against Zhang. However, the military, intent on preserving its image, actively sought to suppress the scandal. Officials from the military police approached Li, pressuring her to withdraw her complaint. They promised a peaceful resolution if she cooperated but threatened to inform her parents and fiancé about the assault if she persisted. Amid these pressures, Li also faced harassment from Zhang himself. He bombarded her with calls and messages, displaying no remorse. Instead, he mocked and threatened her, claiming influential connections that could destroy her life if she continued her pursuit of justice. This unrelenting torment plunged Li further into a psychological abyss, forcing her to rely on medication for mental health disorders. 2 months after the assault, Li Yaren was transferred to the 15th Fighter Wing, a decision she welcomed as a chance to escape the haunting memories of her previous unit. However, upon arriving at her new post, she discovered that her ordeal had become public knowledge. Instead of finding empathy, she encountered judgment and scorn. Her new comrades whispered and pointed, and her female roommates hurled cruel accusations, blaming her for seducing Sergeant Zhang and causing his actions. This victim-blaming culture broke Li further. The stigma and alienation made her feel as though she had been transformed from a victim into the villain. In her final video, Li detailed not only the assault but also the unrelenting injustices she endured in the aftermath. Her fiancé later revealed additional heartbreaking details about her final days. On May 21, 2021, a day known as Couples Day in Korea and celebrated for its romantic significance, Li and her fiancé registered their marriage. Although her husband had to work a night shift, the couple shared a quiet lunch together, tidied their home, and made plans for their upcoming wedding ceremony. That afternoon, as her husband left for work, Li Yaren was left alone, battling the weight of her unresolved trauma, societal judgment, and the failure of the system meant to protect her. After her husband left for his night shift, Li Yaren was left alone in their home. The silence and solitude amplified the weight of the pain and injustice she had endured. The betrayal by the institution she had devoted her life to, the cruel judgment of her peers, and the unrelenting harassment from her perpetrator had pushed her to the edge. By the evening, Lee Yaren recorded a heart-wrenching video where she tearfully recounted the abuse, humiliation, and systemic failures she faced. She expressed her deep despair, feeling abandoned by both the military and society. In the video, she called for justice and accountability, hoping her story would bring light to the systemic problems within the military and serve as a voice for other silent victims. The next morning, May 22, 2021, Lee Yaren's lifeless body was found in her home. She had taken her own life. The news of her death sent shockwaves across South Korea, sparking outrage and grief among the public. The young soldier who had once dreamed of serving her country with honor had been driven to despair by the very institution she loved. After the information was posted online, the case quickly shocked public opinion. Major media outlets simultaneously covered the story, sparking an unprecedented wave of outrage across South Korea. Within just 48 hours, over 400,000 people signed a petition demanding a transparent investigation and justice for Lee Yaren. Under pressure from public opinion, the military was forced to act. They not only arrested Sergeant Jang but also dismissed and launched an investigation into Lieutenant Wu. After more than 10 days of interrogation, Jang confessed to assaulting Lee Yaren. Moreover, during the questioning process, Sergeant Jang revealed nearly 10 other assault cases he had committed. Taking advantage of the victim's fear and hesitation, he consistently used threats to conceal his crimes over a long period. Ultimately, South Korea's Supreme Military Court sentenced Sergeant Jang to 9 years in prison. Following the case, the South Korean government pledged comprehensive reforms of the military system to eliminate misconduct and injustice. According to incomplete statistics, approximately 3,000 sexual assault cases occur annually within the South Korean military, most of which involve abuse of power by superiors against female soldiers. Sergeant Jang became a symbol of moral decay in the military environment, a place that should have been built on discipline, responsibility, and mutual protection. He exploited his power and position to intimidate and assault those who couldn't resist, turning the victim's weakness and silence into tools to hide his crimes. The existence of individuals like him not only represents personal corruption but also reflects major flaws in the South Korean military system at that time. Through this case, we further admire the courage and resilience of female soldier Lee Yaren. Despite threats and intimidation, she stood firm in seeking justice, never backing down. Her tragic passing was an immense loss, but her sacrifice brought about new order and a better future for women in the military system and across the nation. Moreover, Lee Yaren left us with a profound lesson in bravery and perseverance in the pursuit of justice. Life is not only meaningful when it fulfills personal needs but also when it is recognized and respected by society. Only by living with noble purposes and fighting for what is right can we discover the true value of life. What are your thoughts on today's case? Feel free to share your feelings in the comments below so we can discuss this topic further. Thank you for watching today's video. Before you leave, don't forget to support the Dark Cases of Asia by liking the video and subscribing to the channel to explore more intriguing cases. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.